Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and members. I'm Councillor Mark Evans and I'll be chairing this meeting of the Planning Committee, and you're all most welcome. A particular welcome to our members of the public. Thank you for showing the interest, I suspect, here for one particular hearing, and I thank you for your attendance. Can I just remind you or tell you that the planning meeting has to be conducted in complete silence, so I can show, or we can show, that there's no influence of the members from the public gallery. So I will say that you're going to hear things that you agree with, no cheering please. You're going to hear things that you disagree with, no booing please. If you can just be respectful and just remain silent as best you can through the hearing, then that will help me considerably. So thank you for that. So I've introduced myself, Councillor Mark Evans, and on my right is?
I'm Councillor Bob Cope, I'm Vice Chairman.
I'm Pardip Sharma and I'm the Legal Advisor to the Planning Committee today.
Helen Bembo, Development Management Team Manager.
Kelly Harris, Lead Planning Manager.
Gavin Pearce, Senior Arboricultural Officer.
Amanda Willis, Planning Support.
And thank you for that. And just remind everybody that this meeting has been recorded, and by your presence here you agree to that process. And also remind you that anything you say will be immediately available in the public domain. Okay, item 1, minutes. That's to approve the minutes of the Planning Committee on the 21st of November 2023. Members, do I have your approval of those minutes? Anybody against? And is there anybody abstaining? Councillor Sutton? Okay, excellent. Thank you. So thank you, members. Those minutes have been approved. Item 2 is apologies.
I've received apologies from Councillors Chapman and Bond.
Thank you for that. Item 3, declarations of interest. Members, declarations of interest.
Just to say that and Councillor Andy Adams is going to make a presentation tonight, is my husband, but I have got an open mind and will make a decision on this application after all the discussions. Okay.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Is there any other member declaring an interest?
No, not declaring interest. Just a note from Councillor Harper Wallace. He's still behind a car crash, so he thinks he's running about 30 minutes late. I just want to make that you have a chair.
Sorry, who is that?
Councillor Harper Wallace.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 4, which is determination of planning applications. And the first one is application number 23/00009/FUL. And this is Aura Power Developments Limited, land around Preston Hill Farm, Preston Vale, Penkridge, Staffordshire, ST195RA. I'll ask Helen Bembo to make the presentation. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. The site consists of around 73 hectares of arable farmland and is situated around 1 mile west of the service village of Penkridge. The site is within a rural area designated as open countryside and characterised by open fields. The site is relatively flat, with a vehicle access from the farmhouse, which is a Grade 2 listed building, from Preston Vale Lane to the south, and from the north via a track from Leavedale Road. The farm is currently used for sheep farming and not for food production. The site area is under one ownership, with the exception of one field, which is noted as Field 3 on the submitted plans, which is under separate ownership. So this is the site location plan shown here. So the main area for development in the centre, and this is the farmhouse here and Leavedale Road just to the north. That's the access point shown there. And the following plan shows the numbered fields and the areas for the solar array. The application seeks permission for a solar installation with the generation capacity of approximately 49.9 megawatts, generating enough power for approximately 14,000 homes. The development would involve the installation of solar panels themselves, which would be mounted at an angle on frames, along with a series of inverters, CCTV cameras, perimeter fencing, and a substation which would connect into an existing pylon location. It is proposed that sheep can continue to graze under the panels once installed. The site is located within the open countryside, and the proposal would have a material impact on the character and appearance of the landscape. However, this would be softened over time with the maturing of the landscaping which is proposed. There are no public rights of way through the site, and it is accepted that views to the site would be limited from many public vantage points. Furthermore, there are positives to the scheme with regards to biodiversity net gain. An agricultural land classification report has been submitted, which confirms that around 63% of the site area would constitute best and most valuable land, which is grade 2 and 3A, with 64% remaining not best and most versatile. The listed farmhouse is located within the vicinity of the site, and plans have been amended to reduce the amount of solar panels within the array around the setting of the farmhouse. This area is now proposed for bird mitigation. The proposal is considered to result in a less than substantial harm to the heritage asset, which must be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal. Whilst provision of agricultural land, food production and landscape character, this is clearly important, the NPPF and UK legislation set out clear government commitment to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And South Staffordshire Council, along with many other councils, have declared a climate emergency. Recently updated national policy statements also need to be afforded weight in the planning balance. In line with the NPPF, local planning authorities should approve applications for renewables if the impact can be made acceptable. The Council's recent Sustainable Construction and Renewable Energy topic paper also highlights the need for a sustained increase in solar development. So we did have a site visit to this application site yesterday for those members who were able to attend, but just for those who aren't as familiar with the site, I will go through some photos. So this is a shot of the actual grade 2 listed building itself, which is the farmhouse. And this is a view from the southern side of the site, looking north on the left-hand side and then northwest. A view across field number 3, which is the field under separate ownership from that of the farmhouse, and then views across fields 8, 9 and 10 towards the distance there. This is east across the site, and then the application site edge towards the house itself. This is finally a view from Leavedale Road looking south, and then again from Leavedale Road looking towards the entrance. And then this is the point of the existing access, but we improved for the main point of access to the site. In the balance of considerations, it is considered that the development's potential contribution to climate change is a significant factor weighing in favour of the proposal. And as such, it is recommended for approval by officers, and this permission is recommended on a temporary period basis for 40 years, at which point the equipment could be removed and the site reverted back to its agricultural use. Recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ellen, for that presentation. Members, you've heard the presentation, and the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Now, we do have a number of speakers. Speaking against the application is Katie McCreath from Council Legal. I'll call on Ms McCreath. Madam, it's 5 minutes all, and I will be quite strict on that. Yeah.
Either? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, everybody hear me? Good evening. I stand before you not only as a professional, but as somebody who's grown up on the Leavedale Road. enjoying the beautiful countryside and historic farms. During World War II, my grandmother worked on the valuable commandeered land as a land girl, feeding a nation in crisis. Today, that same land, rich in history and memories, stands on the brink of irreversible change. Now, my 4-year-old daughter's greatest joy is walking through Grandad's fields, which are in danger of being completely eclipsed under an expanse of industrial solar panels, lost forever. We don't wield pitchforks and fire. We come with facts embodying the spirit of democracy. We are not anti-renewable. We understand the value of their importance. However, we firmly believe this is the wrong place for this project. It's troubling that Aura Power have made brazen attempts to contact committee members by phone directly to engage, which could risk the integrity. Despite this, we trust in your experience and diligence to navigate these matters appropriately. Our report aims to take a holistic view based on environmental, fiscal factors, community health and agricultural productivity. But most importantly, for your deliberations tonight, it must be based on your own council's published policies, EQ1 to EQ4 being the most important. You're not here to look nationally, but locally. Almost every provision of your thoughtful local plan as it's currently published stands to be disregarded if this application is passed. To ignore this is to silence the very voice of your community. The report has been compiled by the community with the assistance of data and independent experts. The anxiety and stress experienced by many who sit here tonight is profound, and others who didn't feel they could even attend. Claims of consultation by Aura Power in their flyer, listening to the community, are laughable at best. You've seen 80 objections by the local community. Have you seen any supporting comments by residents of the Levedale Road who do not stand to benefit financially from this project? Look at the residents here in this room tonight. Do they feel heard? It's essential to recognise we're already surrounded by renewable energy sources in this very small community. You have, pending, the Gailey interchange with 150 acres of solar panels and battery storage. Rob Baston's 2 wind turbines generating significant power, and Lower Drayton Farms digesters. You have so many applications pending which may be better and safer than this project. Yet the community has been railroaded into accepting more without considering the current contributions or the fact that it can take up to a decade to get connected to the grid. We all know solar on best value land isn't the answer. In November, you heard the battery storage facility application on this very stand. The quote, last winter, the National Grid paid out in excess of £181 million to turn off wind power and solar to avoid network overload. At times, we generate too much electricity and we even sell it overseas. Why do we need to add to this problem in our area? Let's address the soil reports used by the applicants to justify this project. The data relied upon misrepresents the land. The data is over 4 decades old. That's older than me. Believe only what you see. And our residents sat here tonight have witnessed decades of bountiful harvests, including grains, vegetables and strawberries on this land, demonstrating its true quality. The proposed solar farm threatens to replace what could annually yield from the same piece of land 2.6 million kilos of potatoes, 800,000 loaves of bread, 172 cows could produce for the community 1.4 million litres of milk and 26 pints of lager. As a nation, importing nearly half of its food, can we really afford to overlook such agricultural productivity? Remember, you're being asked to sacrifice green land for green statistics. They speak of biodiversity gain, but let's be realistic. How much biodiversity can really thrive under a shroud of solar panels? Now consider the already overwhelmed and dangerous Levedale Road. At the battery storage application in November, one of your councillors stated the lane was a main road. You visited the photographs in our report, the independent experts analysis, the road closures, the accidents, the lorries in the ditches and the floods. They suggest differently, don't they? It's clearly a country lane used by horse riders, bikers, runners and dog walkers. We also hope you've considered the concerns raised by the locals who've witnessed flooding and the potential contamination of waters that could appear. In summary, your decision today...
5 minutes are up. I'm sorry to interrupt. That's very impassioned speech, but the 5 minutes are up. And thank you very much for that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Call on Councillor Andy Adams, who will also speak again. Sir, you got 5 minutes.
Just before we start, I'd like to thank Katie McCreath for a very, very comprehensive report on this application. Thank you, Katie. Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Committee, and indeed the planning officers, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to visit the application site yesterday. And yes, it was muddy and it was a long walk over the fields. You've personally seen how beautiful this part of rural Staffordshire is, rolling green fields for miles, well into Shropshire and all agricultural land. You've also had the opportunity to see firsthand the difference in crops growing in category 3A and 3B land. You saw winter wheat growing in both categories of land. And yes, you were hard put to see any real significant difference. Truth is, I'm advised, one will produce about 4 tonnes per acre and the other one 2.5 tonnes per acre. For me, that is not a large enough discrepancy to warrant it being used for commercial industrial purposes, a solar factory. Once again, the proposed use of BMV land, grade 2 and 3A, best and most versatile land, gives me concern. According to question perhaps the numbers, it's 39% in this application, and that's the equivalent of 44 football pitches. Members of the committee, you're aware of the figures and you will no doubt take them into account. Members, you will also remember only a short while ago, you declined an application for 170 acres of solar factory, not even a mile up the road from this application. There is potential this application may come back, sincerely hope not. But the cumulative effect on this would have the area would be devastating. Consultees, the parish council, are not in favour of this application, stating it is industrialisation of the agricultural farmland. The residents don't want this application. They see fields of solar farms. I also question, and perhaps this is one which is more difficult to answer, the wildlife and ecology. 40 years of barren land is a long time to guarantee a species will still exist on it. Gavin Williams, MP, is also against this application. We all recognise, moving on, we all recognise that the Ukraine is known as the breadbasket of Europe. Sadly, with events that are happening in that country, we cannot rely on the wheat and grain which they normally send to us being available for us to import. Where would we go? Perhaps a homegrown on our own local fields. South Staffordshire is being targeted, rapidly becoming the substation nation with 17 applications in the offing. Energy crisis. Well, members, let's when we took you out on our field trip, I pointed out 2 wind farms at Rodbaston, already mentioned, 2 or 3 acres producing enough energy for 14,000 houses, each one of them. Every revolution of those blades provides energy to power a house for a full day. Energy crisis again. Let's talk about the food crisis. Currently, we import 43% of the food we eat. What's the carbon footprint on aeroplanes bringing that in? We need our government to get behind our farmers and help them produce greater yields and more crops. Once this land is gone, we cannot create farmland from some magical pot. It's gone. This, in effect, is the 3rd time I've stood before you presenting for a case for refusal. I'm not against clean and green energy. What I am wholeheartedly against is using good quality agricultural land. And if I am presented with an application of this type of development on agricultural land, category 4 or 5, I'll not be standing here to develop it, because that is the right type of land we should be putting it on. Finally, I'd like to thank all the residents from Penkridge, Levedale and Coppenhall who've been steadfast in helping bring their views to this planning committee. I'd also say that the community are a tight-knit group, and I accept that for farmers life is tough. In fact, no, it's very tough. We need our farmers, we need them to receive the support from government to make their farms and livelihoods secure by farming the land. There are other methods we as a nation need to explore in providing a solution to the energy shortage and to make our nation energy self-sufficient. Finally, members of the committee, common sense and our own council's stated policy should result in the refusal of this application, referring to OC1, the protection of the countryside for its own sake, EQ4, to maintain the intrinsic rural character and local distinctiveness of the landscape. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Adams, and thank you for keeping within the time limits. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, one last question, please. I've been asked if we could have a named vote, please, on this.
Now call Mr. Peter Thomas from Aurora Power to speak for the application.
Good evening. My name is Peter Thomas and I'm the head of UK development at Aurora Power. I would like to start my speech by reading a short statement from the farmer at this site. We have been farming this land for 43 years and are primarily a livestock farm with around 300 cattle and 1,800 sheep. Over the last 5 years, the crops that we have grown have been used for animal feed or as feedstock for bioethanol energy plants. Very little is produced for human consumption, and approving the solar farm does not pose a risk to food security. In fact, the land being used for the solar panels has been specifically chosen because it is the least productive land on our farm. We also have no intention of reducing the number of livestock on the farm and plan to graze sheep around the panels if the site is approved. As farmers, we have been facing several challenges recently with the removal of farm subsidies, increased fertiliser costs and high energy costs. This solar farm will allow us to diversify our income streams and future-proof our business by producing food on the farm as well as electricity. I implore members to consider my family's position in their decision-making and vote to approve this plan application. Thank you. So I now speak briefly on behalf of the applicant, Aurora Power. We have worked extensively and proactively with the local community and other stakeholders before submitting our application and throughout determination. Wherever possible, we have made amendments to our proposals and we have provided supplementary information to support the assessment of the project or provide clarification wherever required. Although it is not a material planning consideration, we are also offering a voluntary index-linked community benefit fund of £20,000 per year for the lifetime of the solar farm. The use of agricultural land is unavoidable, but we always seek to avoid using good quality agricultural land in our developments where possible. Approximately 64% of this site comprises grade 3B land, which is not classed as best and most versatile. It is also worth highlighting that the farmer plans to continue grazing the fields where the panels are located and that there is ample good quality farmland in this district. The site is predominantly flat and benefits from established hedgerows which minimise any visual impact. Your officer's report confirms that the site will not detrimentally impact upon the landscape of the area, that there will be no undue material harm to neighbouring amenity, and that there is less than substantial harm on the small number of listed buildings around the site. Our proposals also include extensive new planting, including 1 kilometre of new native trees and hedgerows and 12 hectares of wildflower meadows. All the existing ponds on the site will be retained and any trees that are damaged because of the work completed will also be replaced. Overall, the project will deliver a biodiversity net gain of 97% for habitats and 87% for hedgerows, which is well above the 10% minimum requirement. We have also revised the access point following feedback from the local community and have committed to reinstating the Leavedale Road to a better condition than it is currently in. The Highways Officer has raised no objections to our plans. While we do recognise that there is some opposition to the scheme, I encourage members to look at the bigger picture when making their decision. As a country, we need to produce 5 times more energy via solar by 2035, and Staffordshire will need to play its part in achieving that aim. As noted in your officer's report, the wider public benefits of the development are considered to significantly and demonstratively outweigh the minor adverse impacts of the proposal. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, for that presentation, and thank you for keeping within the time limit. Thank you. I would normally ask the other ward member to make comments, but Councillor Harper Willis is not here. So, oh, Councillor Harper Willis, welcome. Now, as a ward member, have you got any comments or observations to make on this application?
I have. I just want to apologise for the way I'm dressed and
Councillor Adams. So I have checked it. I am confident he can speak, but I will check again with the body.
Chair, I can actually confirm the position. In circumstances where a member does actually arrive at committee late, the position is clear that they cannot vote on that application, but it is actually open to them to make their observations and comments.
Okay, Councillor Adams, Councillor Harper Willis, and Councillor Kelly, that also involves you, that you can make comments and observations, ask questions, but unfortunately you are barred from voting. Councillor Harper Willis, excuse is accepted about your address, and please continue.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, apologies for arriving late. I was at a baby scan and there was a lot of traffic on the M6, which kind of segues onto this point and a few points throughout my thoughts when reading this application. Appreciate I haven't heard the other side, but I've read the officer's report quite thoroughly and considered the recommendations. I got into politics to make the world a better place for my future children. And unfortunately, obviously, I can't vote tonight because of unfortunate circumstances. But if I was able to vote, I would be voting to approve this application. The OECD has projected greenhouse gas emissions in 2050 are expected to be 50% higher that's 50% higher than today. This is mainly due to 70% of those greenhouse gas emissions being energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. This will result in a global temperature increase between 3 and 6 degrees. At 3 degrees, we're going to experience more severe heat waves, lower crop yields, massive migration, more disease, regular flooding, and our ecosystems collapsing. At 6 degrees, the planet's surface becomes uninhabitable. Simply put, we're facing an extinction event. So putting aside the collapse of our climate for a moment, there's also a strong argument to be made around securing the UK's energy sector. The war in Ukraine has shown that countries that rely on cheap oil and gas from dictators pay the price. You can look at the struggles Germany are having to go through because they were heavily reliant on Russian gas to power their their manufacturing sector. With that being said, we must reduce our overall reliance on imported energy to further strengthen the UK's independence as a nation. Finally, comments have also been made around food security. From the proposal, I can see that there's still going to be the opportunity for the farmer to farm that land and grow lamb. However, if the global temperature rises to 3%, that food yields are going to go down anyway, because it's going to be unsustainable to grow in these areas. We've got to make a choice here whether we ignore the warnings that scientists are giving us and reject the proposal, or make an active contribution to stopping the climate collapse. So I would really hope that members would join me in the opinion that we should approve these plans. Those members that are considering rejecting this, I asked them to have a hard think about how you're going to explain to your children and grandchildren on why you put their futures at risk. And I know that's quite an emotive thing, and I know that that's potentially not a material planning concern, but what is a material planning concern is the NPPF around the balance to sustainable renewable energy projects. And the reason that is because we are facing this climate collapse. So I'd hope members take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hopwell. Members, you've heard the presentation from Helen. You've heard 2 speakers against, 1 speaker for, and the views of the ward member, Councillor Harper Willis. I'm now going to throw it open to the floor to all the members to ask questions of the officers and to make any comments or observations. Members. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened very carefully to what's been said, both for the proposal and also those that are against. I think that we as a council and all the members on this committee are members of the district council. We are committed to reduce carbon, and it's in our policies that we will try and reduce them by a certain period. So it's in the report, but that's our objective. And I think that we must take heed to that. And I took quite a lot of notice of the local member who has obviously taken a great deal of thought into that. And I also want to touch on some of the comments that were made about the farming. I just seem to have a bit of interest in farming. I don't know why, but there you go. I'm very aware of the need for diversification. It's a buzzword now in agriculture. Incomes have dropped down, subsidies have disappeared, and we're looking now at possible reductions in imports from the country that's in war with Russia, and they are one of the biggest wheat production countries. And I wonder what they're doing now. Have they planted their seed for this next year, or have they been doing something else? So I think there's going to be quite a knock-on effect in next year's crops, and that's very important to think about. And while I'm talking about diversification, the future of farming in this country is dependent on succession. And I spoke to the farmer yesterday on the site visit, and he said to me that he was very concerned about the future for his son. Now, if they can't continue farming, but think about what they're going to do. Probably sell the land. And who's going to buy it? And what price? And what are they going to do with it? I think at the moment, the situation that we're in is that we are actually protecting our farming industry by ensuring that we get an income to subsidise the farming operation so they can continue. Sometimes continue generations that passed it down from one to another, and that's what's happening in Penkridge. So I'm very concerned that there's an emphasis on industrialisation, as I read. I don't think I've seen an industrial estate where sheep are grazing underneath it. So, you know, I'm taking all that into consideration, but I certainly am going to support the recommendation that our officers have recommended. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Reid. Any other member wants to ask questions or make any comments or observations? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Just clarification from Democratic Services. I've heard all the speakers speak. I know I was a couple of minutes late, but does that make a difference to me voting? And what section does it relate to of the...
Yeah, Chair, my view is that, you know, in legal terms, a member should be present at the outset of the presentation of a report and throughout the meeting. So I appreciate that you were a couple of minutes late, but you did miss the presentation. And my view is that you were not here for the whole of this presentation. So I do apologise, but from a legal perspective, I don't think that you are in a position to vote.
Councillor Kelly, okay. Okay, members. Okay, Councillor Ashley. Sorry, Ashley.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I attended the site visit yesterday together with colleagues, and if I may say so, it was quite an illuminating visit, because we saw on the ground exactly what was involved. And what I've tried to do is make an assessment from the information I've been given by the excellent report by officers, and of course the presentations that we've had tonight. Now, what I'm trying to do is make my mind up. I've not made it yet. There's no predetermination, I can assure you. But I think what I would try to do is put the pluses and minuses as I see them. Now, first of all, the whole scheme would produce, well, for round figures, 50 megawatts of electricity, which is a substantial amount. It's been said 14,000 houses would be provided. The thing that also seems to me to be a benefit in this particular application, there's no battery storage issue. The electricity produced would go to a substation and then subsequently straight into the grid. So that is, if you like, better than perhaps other applications that we've had. There is a claim of biodiversity gain. Seems quite high, but again, we have to take a look and assess the figures that we're given. Again, to, shall I call it, sweeten the application, there's £20,000 in community funding from the developer for each year that it is operating. And that's got to be a positive step, one assumes. Now, we had a discussion with the farmer whilst we were on the site visit. Now, again, we can only take what we were told. I'm not sure, we're not farmers like Councillor Reid, and we don't know much about it. The farmer did indicate that the land that is proposed for development would only be used for growing food for cattle. In other words, it wouldn't be used for what was being quoted, I don't know, wheat, ground crops and so on. So he was fairly positive there on the question of the loss of what could be said valuable growing land. Also, the fact is, it's been quoted tonight, there is 1,800 sheep apparently already on the farm. I'll come on to the question of the sheep and how it's used later. But on our visit, we saw one sheep, I think, and that had to be captured and locked into a field. So it would appear there are positives, Mr. Chairman, on the scheme. But looking on the negatives to it, there would in fact be, 72 hectares of arable land that would be in fact under these solar panels. And the question that was also discussed was the fact that the land underneath the solar panels would still be usable by sheep. Now, quite honestly, I'm rather sceptical about the claims, if you like, that we can have land that is being used for sheep rearing and grazing, and at the same time, 3 foot above them are solar panels, thousands of them, that are absorbing the sun. And my impression was it was the sun that tends to grow grass, which is what we feed on. I think we all know the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, so there is a certain movement under the panels. But I just wonder what the deterioration of that type of arable land would be, even for sheep grazing, underneath this massive area of solar panels. So that is something that I wasn't particularly convinced, but that is the claim that was made. One thing that did concern me as well, and again, that is if members are minded to approve the application, and that's the question of development, because the roads that we actually went along, from a development point of view, and I understand that if the application's approved, it would probably take place and be developed within a year. So it is not one of the long-term land bank schemes. But I could see significant construction problems on those narrow roads around Leavedale with regards to if this is approved for development. Now, again, that would be up to the developer as such as to how they would manage that. But there's no doubt for at least a considerable period, the whole area would be disrupted. I also accept, and we've seen it tonight, there is considerable local opposition, and they have made various points why they obviously do not like the application and so on. But I got the impression, being on the site, that with a great deal of the biodiversity initiatives around the site, from the point of view of actually observing the panels, it would appear to me, I don't know, but there didn't seem to me, it didn't seem to be a, what shall I call it, a glaring area within that particular area of countryside. So that is the thing, Mr. Chairman, that I've got to weigh up. But again, I would welcome other members' comments with regards to their opinion as to the validity, whether this application should be refused or not. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ashley, I think you've raised some good points there and highlighted the benefits of the site visit. Now, I'll ask Helen if there's anything there that you'd like to come back on. Helen?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just to come back on a couple of points, Councillor Ashley, that might help you with that balancing exercise that you clearly undertaking. In terms of the solar panels, there's a see-through element to them, so the light does get through, so they wouldn't be casting a permanent shadow when the sun was shining. And there's a lot of scientific evidence out there that says that it is supportive of the sheep being able to live underneath, so hopefully that helps. In terms of construction traffic, we have to be mindful within the context of a planning perspective that construction is temporary. So whilst we acknowledge what you've said about the transport, we need to be mindful of that. And obviously once off and operational, the amount of trips to the site is minimal. And I would agree with your point about visual impact. The site visit was quite helpful for that, I thought, where we could see the vistas and the key views. And obviously the panels, the arrays themselves are set away from the residential properties. And the assessment that was done, the landscape impact assessment, did concur with that there wouldn't be a harmful impact when combined with the planting that we know is going to be proposed as part of the scheme. So I hope that helps. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ellen. Councillor Ashley, does that answer the points that you raised? Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, just picking up on all the fields that are going to be now covered in solar panels. My understanding was from listening to the farmer that he grew on those fields currently the feed for his animals. Where is he going to grow them now? Is the question I'd like answering.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'll pick that up because obviously it was on the same site visit. As I understand it, the farmer, those fields will be used for sheep grazing, so there'll be just a different type of feed because they will feed off the grass, and that there's the other fields within the farm ownership would be used. And he was explaining how they rotate some of the crops and that they've been using those fields for quite some time now, but it would be appropriate for sheep to graze on them. And then the other fields that are outside the boundary would be used for different growing crops to support those other animals.
Just to come back on that then, the land that's going to be potentially used, depending on the vote tonight, was quite a considerable amount of his land. So I still struggle to see how he can grow enough food for his animals with the limited ground space he'll have available.
If I can just come back on that, thank you for you, Chair. The farmer confirmed, I believe it's in the planning statement as well, that it's the diversification of his farming, in that his output would still be the same. It was just that there was different animals in different fields on different crops, and that his output for his family business, as I understand it from the planning statement, would be the same output, and we have to take that at face value as to that's obviously his business plan.
As you say, on face value.
Okay, Councillor Duncan, okay. Any other members? Councillor Steele.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Chairman. County Highways, the report says recommendation, summary, conditional. Could you just clarify? I mean, normally they just say recommendation, no issues. Then they go on to explain a few things, but I'm not quite sure what they mean by conditional. Could you?
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Helen, you taking that one?
Yes, thank you, through you. Just to say that they would recommend planning conditions associated with any approval. So the list of conditions that have been provided with the report would include any conditions they thought were relevant. They would mainly relate to the plans that refer to the visibility display for the access points. So when we did the visit, we obviously walked through the track area up on Leavedale Road, which was planned to be the access point. They would want to make sure that that was constructed to the necessary standard and width prior to any use of that access. So that would be subject to a planning condition referring back to the plan that was submitted with the details of the application. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Steele, you want to come back on that?
If I may, they then go on to say reasons and says 1 and 2 in the interests of highway safety. So is it, are you saying that the visibility display is the issue there with that one? Okay.
Helen?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So obviously they would want to make sure that the access point was safe from a, from a swept path perspective and from a visibility display perspective prior to its use. So it basically ensures that it goes in before any vehicles start to use it and it's safe. So that's what they're referring to when it says for safety purposes. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Steele, you okay with that? Okay, members. Councillor Harper-Willis.
Thank you, Chair. I think I heard members talk about the UK's food security, and that is 100% a consideration we should be thinking about. I think this application actually strengthens our position, as Councillor was mentioning, around the difficulties around farming and the need for diversification, because there are no subsidies. The alternative is this farmer goes out of business potentially because there aren't the subsidies, and then we lose a farm that potentially is most likely going to get bought by housing developers, and that field will be left unattended by someone who's grown food. So I think by giving and we've heard today as well that the output is still going to be the same. So I think this actually strengthens the UK's food security, because we've got a farmer who's getting income in as well as producing the same output, and obviously gets a revenue stream that allows them to cope with any of these issues around fertilisation costs going up and things like that.
Thank you, Councillor Harper-Willis. Any other member? Councillor Reid, sorry. Yeah.
There we are. Thank you. Yes, it was just a comment on the way the farm is farmed and the husbandry. I was very impressed with it. I thought it was a well farmed farm. I noted that all the hedges were cut, kept neat and tidy, the fences, etc., etc. I think it's a well-run farm, and by having a well-run farm, which is also viable in the future, which our councillor from Penkridge just said, is paramount, because we want succession farming. We want the sons of the likes of the farmer we're dealing with to allow his son to carry on, not advise him not to go into farming, and that is what's happening. And this is why we're very worried about the number of farmers that are going to be taking up farms in the future. We've got to look after them. Exactly what was said earlier on. I'm passionate about it because I've been involved with it from the day I got born, I think. That's it. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Adams?
Sorry, could you just clarify where the residents are here? Are their houses on that right-hand side? Sorry, I don't know whether it's east or west. Where the houses where all these residents live, where are they looking over onto this?
Helen, you take that?
I obviously don't have the exact addresses of all the people in the gallery, but in terms of the site visit that we went on, if you can, I don't know if you can see my cursor on that screen. So Leavedale Road there is to the north of the site, and there's properties which run along here. So when we stopped and we obviously looked at the access track, there was properties there along the north of the site, so they would be looking south towards the site. Then there's obviously the farmhouse itself, there's some properties to the south as well, and then obviously to the far east you've got Penkridge Village. Does that help? But I think it's that.
Yeah, so it looks as if they're, where you've got your cursor, where it goes up there, it looks as if they're around here. Right hand side.
Yeah, following the curve of Leavedale Road, yeah, that's right.
Councillor Davis, as you want to wish to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. We heard several very sort of strong presentations tonight. I must admit, the one that's made an impression on me is by the gentleman from the farm. He said that the land in question was the least productive land on the farm. It's 60% grade 3B, I think, was that right? Yeah. And that they're also going to produce 12 hectares of wildflower meadow. You know, if this thing goes ahead. Very situation currently. I think that the fact that they'd be able to sort of carry on farming sheep beneath the appliances and what have you. I am minded to support the recommendation because of that particular situation. I don't think there would, you know, I think we're getting the best of both worlds here. We're getting an amount of energy, and we're maintaining the food, a certain amount of food supply as well. So I'm minded to support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Perry.
Thank you. Just a question on the report. The historical environment, can I ask on that one? It looks as though there's further work to do on that. Has all the work been done, or is there further work to be developed on there? Because reading it, there's some unanswered questions within that report. So can I ask that question, please?
And Councillor Perry, is that Helen?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair, we have had some amendments to the scheme, which was based on the comments from Historic England, which related to the setting of the Grade 2 listed farmhouse, which sits outside the red line on this plan, if I can just show you, which is there. So this field here in the corner, the solar arrays were removed from that part, which was deemed to be the most sensitive and affecting the setting of the listed building. So we had the amendments made. That was done in conjunction with the Conservation Officer, the Senior Conservation Officer for the District Council. Historic England were reconsulted but did provide any further commentary. So what you read in is their commentary based on the first set of plans, but they defer the responsibility for the balance to the District Authority, and the Senior Conservation Officer has done that and is content that it's less than substantial harm. So that has been bottomed out now in terms of the final recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Perry, happy with that? Okay, members, any other member wishes to?
Yeah, just a short observation. I think we've had some really good speeches and really good debate across the chamber from everybody involved, and fantastic clarifications from the officers. I think it's always going to be a difficult one because it involves change, doesn't it? It involves change to the landscape, it involves change to energy supply, it involves change to the farming. But I think, and you know, we've got to put everything in the balance. Things like, you know, I did hear mention across the room about the way of people's objections, but obviously that's not a material concern, so we can't judge it on how many objections have come in. So you know, it is in the balance of what the report says and what we've heard from what people said. And I picked up on somebody's sentiment about, you know, something like the war effort in World War II, and I think we're probably in a situation now with farming and climate change where we probably need similar efforts in that way, that we're going to have to do things that might be unpopular but might be the right things to do. So again, hearing the arguments, and I think probably what's really strong me is Councillor Reid as a farmer, and his opinion on that. You know, I'm minded to, you know, to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Spruce. Any other member? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. If I recall, because I was on the site visit, the farmer owns 250 acres, and the fields to the left of the farmhouse are the other fields where he says his beef and some of the sheep will graze, and so it won't affect him that detrimentally because he's got 250. And look at how much land he's actually using for the solar panels, is less than half to where I can see.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Any, sorry, Councillor Perry.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just coming back on the archaeological site. You mentioned the listed building. What about the conditions that are in the report where it says that the development shall not be occupied until the investigation of the site has been completed? Now, are you telling me that it's just the site that's been taken out, or is the site the whole site, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Perry. I should have been clearer on that. When we're looking at the Grade 2 listed building, we're obviously looking at the heritage asset. When we're looking at that condition you're referring to, it's based on archaeology, so the two separate things. So the archaeological investigation will be done as part of the redevelopment, just to make sure there's nothing there that we want to be aware of, whether it's to be removed, preservation in situ, but that would be done prior to any of the installation, and that's across the whole site.
That, Chairman, who will be doing that? Because if it's the developer themselves, then obviously they've got a vested interest in making sure that there's nothing shown up on the site, and the site might be of interest. And what happens if they should find something? Then I take it that this will be moved out, taken out of the scenario altogether.
It would have to be carried out by a suitably qualified professional. Obviously, ethics and code of conduct come into play then, and if items or anything is found on site, they're duty bound to report that to the county archaeologist. If it depends on what they find, so it's a bit of a speculative question, but depending on the nature of what they find depends on how they therefore deal with that and treat it. It's quite extreme for them not to be able to record, preserve or remove, depending on what it is they find. If anything, that is, it's obviously just a precautionary approach, but they would need to do that exercise with a suitably qualified archaeologist and report any findings to the county. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Perry, is that okay? Councillor Perry? Okay. Members, any other member want to make any comments or observations? Okay, so we'll move to the vote. I've had a consultation with my Vice Chair and Bardip, and I'm quite comfortable with a named vote. So we will have a named vote. I suspect that means a little extra work for somebody, so I'll just sort that out and then we'll move to vote. Councillor Steele?
Have we gone into debate yet? I thought we were asking questions. Was it both?
Sorry, I include that. If you want to go to debate now, do you? Is there anything you particularly want to bring up? I include that in the comments and observations. So I do it all as one whole. But if you're saying that you want to carry on further, I'm quite happy to do that.
There is something. Yes, I do want to speak.
Councillor Steele.
Thank you. Yeah. as a country, we are faced with this problem of generating green energy. There's no bigger objector to some of the things that we're being asked to have in South Staffordshire than me. But the government, the starting point is in favour of these developments. And it's all on planning balance. And in my opinion, on this one, there aren't enough objections. So reluctantly, I feel I'm going to have to support the recommendation. But I would like to hear a few other people say something before we actually go to a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. A plea from Councillor Steele for other members to make any other observations or go to debate. Members. Councillor Steele, your plea has fallen on stony ground. Okay, so we will move to vote, and I'll ask for those members who support the application to raise their hands, and we'll make we'll take note of the names. So we'll do that now. So members, those supporting the application, please raise your hands. This is in favour of the application. In favour of the application. Yes, please raise your hand. It's very weird.
Just to summarise, those in favour of the application, I've got Councillor Burnett, Councillor Ashley, Councillor Davis, Councillor Reid, Councillor Steele, Councillor Hesseltine, Councillor Spruce and Councillor Evans. Those against the application, sorry, I should say that's 8, we all agreed, thank you. And then those against the application, I've got Councillor Duncans, Councillor Mrs Adams, Councillor Sutton, Councillor Holmes and Councillor Perry. That's 5 against and 1 abstention from Councillor Cope.
Yeah, thank you, members. So that application has been approved. The application has been approved. Thank you, members. Ladies and gentlemen from the public, thank you very much for the way you've conducted yourself during that process and that debate. Unless you particularly want to go through the rest of the meeting, I will invite you to leave if you so wish. But thank you very much for the way you conducted yourselves. Okay, members, if we can resume with the meeting, please, members. Members, please. Thank you for that, and thank you for that last application. The debate was very well conducted. Right, we move on to the next application, which is application 23/00978/FUL. And this is Mr. Jason Milner, Little Round Hill, Tinkers Castle Road, Seaston, Wolverhampton, Whiskey Victor 5-7 Hotel Foxtrot. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to a rural 5-bed detached property situated along Tinkers Castle Road in Swindon. The application proposes the erection of a ground-mounted solar photovoltaic array in the agricultural field to the rear of the garden. It will be positioned close to the existing hedge, in line with the hedge, and measures 16 metres long, 2.3 metres wide, and would occupy a floor area of 37 square metres. So this location plan shows you the area outlined in red there is where the solar array would sit to the rear of the property itself within the agricultural field. And this one is a closer view that shows you the location outside of the garden area of the property. So the application site is within the green belt, and paragraph 156 of the NPPF confirms that when they're located in the green belt, elements of many renewable energy projects will comprise inappropriate development. In such cases, developers will need to demonstrate very special circumstances if projects are to proceed. Such very special circumstances may include the wider environmental benefits associated with the increased production of energy from renewable sources. The panels will introduce development into an area of land that is currently relatively free from any built form, and as such would have some detrimental effects on the openness of the green belt, albeit minor, given their scale and position. And therefore the proposed panels do constitute inappropriate development within the greenbelt. Although this proposal does constitute inappropriate development, there are very special circumstances which are considered to clearly outweigh the potential harm to the greenbelt. There's a strong steer from national policy to approve small-scale renewable sites. Paragraph 164 of the NPPF states that in determining applications, local planning authorities should give significant weight to the need to support energy efficiency and low carbon heating improvements to existing buildings, both domestic and non-domestic. Clear justification has been provided for their siting in the field rather than in the domestic curtilage, given the minor impact of the proposal this would have on the openness. It is not considered that the proposal would cause any material harm to the visual amenity of the greenbelt. Taking this into consideration, it is considered that very special circumstances in this case do exist. So I just want to take members through a few photographs. So this is the actual garden area itself. And due to the orientation, due to the tree planting, the solar array just won't be that efficient and won't get the best results in terms of delivering the energy output. So the proposal is to locate it just beyond the garden area in the field to the rear. But as you can see from the plan, it's quite close to the back of the existing hedge line. So there would be no material harm to neighbouring amenity or on the street scene, given its location. Sorry, went very quiet. And no material issues related to parking or highway safety. Therefore, in this case, approval is recommended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ellen. Councillor Reid, on your ward, is there any comments or observations?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, having read the report carefully, I have no concerns whatsoever and will support the approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Members, any comments or observations or questions? Councillor Kelly, sorry.
Sorry, Chair, just to clarify, with Democratic Services, are me and Councillor Adam Harper Willis able to vote on this? Thank you. Just clarifying.
Welcome back, both. Okay, so we've had the presentation by Helen and Councillor Reid's observations. Any other member wish to make any comments or observations on that application? Members, Councillor Steele.
Can I just have a concise opinion of the very special circumstances in this instance, please?
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Helen?
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. So yeah, green belt, so inappropriate. So we need to stack the very special circumstances up. So in this case, we consider that because of the impact on the openness is quite minimal because of the position of the solar array against the hedge line, the impact is therefore reduced. That's the one key factor. And the second one is the impact on the renewable energy and putting that back into the facilities within the property. So they're stacking up in terms of very special circumstances. So that's what's balanced in the report for you. Thank you.
Councillor Steele, you're interested in coming back on that? Okay, Councillor Reid?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I can confirm that I'm well aware of that location, and it is very secluded really, and it has no impact at all on the openness, and it is well screened at the back. It's a well-known little spot there, very nice little spot. But as I said, you know, I've got no issues with it, and I've heard no sort of parish council issues. So, you know, to me, it's totally acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. So I'm going to move to the vote now. So I'm going to ask members if you support the application to raise your hands. That's to support the application. Thank you, members. Anybody voting against the application? And any abstentions? Thank you, members. That application has been approved. Okay, we move to the next item, which is the new tree preservation order, number 23/18001/TPO, Ormond South Ward. And I think this is quite an unusual one, so I'll hand over to Helen. Helen?
Thank you, Chair. And I am very quickly going to hand over to Tree Officer Gavin.
Good evening, everyone. Try and keep this one quite short. Something a little bit different to what a number of you have probably dealt with before. It's not actually an application. What's for consideration here is that we've made a new tree preservation order in South East Wombourne as part of our ongoing district-wide review of tree preservation orders. Essentially, it's incumbent upon us as an authority to make sure that our orders are kept under review and make sure that they're still relevant and so on and so forth. So this particular TPO has been made with a view to them being able to revoke 8 old TPOs that are now at some age and needed updating. Now, during the process of making a tree preservation order, the order then gets served on all of those people who have an interest in the land on which the trees are growing. And as part of that process, they are issued with what's called a Regulation 5 notice, which then allows them 28 days to submit written representations. If as an authority we receive no written representations, we can then proceed to confirming the order, i.e. making it permanent, without as part of our delegated powers. However, if we do receive written representations with regards to a new tree preservation order from anybody served, we have to demonstrate that we've given due consideration to those. And it is our opinion that the best way to do that is to put it before committee for consideration, so that you can determine whether or not we've given due consideration to the written representations we've received. With regards to this particular TPO, we did actually receive a number of representations, which all the details of which are all in the report that you hopefully have all received, along with the rebuttals that I've made to address all of those. Now, if it pleases committee, I'm quite happy to run through those and give a brief summary of representations we had. Yes, is that okay? First two were from 47 Copper Beach Drive and 45 Copper Beach Drive. I grouped those two together because essentially the nature of their representation was the same, which is they objected to the description of the tree's location as being in their back gardens. This is due to an ongoing boundary dispute between those properties and the property developer who developed the Gittings Park housing estate next door. But as I put in my report, the description of the location of the trees is only used to be able to successfully identify the trees at a future time for the purposes of applications and so on and so forth. It isn't the nature of these objections that we received. It essentially is the owners not wishing there to be some kind of official record that apportions them with liability for the trees, as I say, as they dispute their ownership. However, as I say, because this is only a description of the location of the trees to allow identification, it doesn't actually confer any kind of liability. And so for that reason, and because the description, as I say, if you go on site and look at these trees, to all intents and purposes, it appears to be that the trees are located in the rear gardens. So the description has remained the same and unchanged, and you know, I make the point that it confers no liability on those property owners. The next one was from property The Muse at Greenhill Gardens. They objected to the description of the tree as being in their property. This is T27 identified on the order. Basically, the boundary between their property and their neighbouring property is slightly unclear, and so I essentially put it in the wrong property. So that's now been changed on the order that you've had a copy of. So that amendment has already been made, so that objection has been addressed. Next two were from 8 Richmond Gardens and 9 Richmond Gardens. I lumped these two together again as well because they're essentially the same objection, again, to the description of the location of the trees. At one point, I had them located in the garden of 9 Richmond Gardens, but actually it's a group of 4 trees that split over both properties. The reason for this discrepancy is simply that the trees are surveyed from the street. I don't have access to people's back gardens, so obviously I can only make a best guess as to where the trees are located. So again, both properties confirmed that what the description should be, that they're both split over 2 properties, and so that has been amended on the order that you've had a copy of, so that objection has been addressed. The penultimate one is from 38 Wombourne Park. Now, they didn't necessarily submit an objection on the basis of the trees as affects their property specifically, but more questioning why it is that we've placed a TPO on trees that are owned by local authorities, namely our own South Staffs District and Staffordshire County Council. There is an opinion that it's not considered to be best practice to put trees owned by a local authority under TPO. The reason for that is because there is an assumption that trees that are owned by a local authority are kept under good management, and so therefore there wouldn't be a need for a tree preservation order. However, with regards to the trees that are under our ownership, South Staffs, there's no reflection on our own management of our tree stock. This has purely been done because the areas in question back onto private properties, and it was the TPO has been put on these trees in an effort to control private homeowners exercising their common law right to abate nuisance by cutting the trees back. we're not trying to stop people from using their common law right, but we wish to control the manner in which they're doing it so that they're not employing inappropriate contractors, unqualified people to do the works and so on. The Staffordshire County Council trees, it is not unusual for a district level council such as ourselves to put a TPO on county council trees. The reason being obviously that while we would hope that their trees are under good management, they are a separate authority to us and we have no control over what they do and how they do it. And so common to many district level councils, you know, we've included county council trees within this TPO. The last representation was from 2 Greenhill Gardens. It's quite a lengthy representation that was submitted, but essentially to summarise it, it's he submitted an objection on the basis that the order took 3 months to serve from the time that it was made, claiming that this failed some kind of a test of complying with the requirements of the order. When an TPO is made, you have up to 6 months to confirm it. And you have to allow people who are served with a copy of it 28 days, as I say, to submit their representations. As long as that's you conform with that, then the TPO is perfectly legal and defensible. It does say that the orders should be served as soon as possible after they're made. However, given the scale and size of the TPO in question, because this is really rather a large TPO that's been made, given the scale of the order that's been made, three months was a reasonable time scale for me to be able to process that, get it printed, get it served on everybody, and so on and so forth. And like I say, it's perfectly within the requirements of the regulations. The second objection raised was that specifically with regards to an area identified as A2 on the order, which is a few fields out the back of 2 Greenhill Gardens, which the owner of 2 Greenhill Gardens has an interest in. He also is aware of the fact that one of the other parties that has an interest in that land wasn't served with a copy of the order. We obviously do our very best when serving orders to identify all those that have an interest in the land, but especially with an order of this size, sometimes we're not able to track down everybody who may have a particular interest. As soon as we became aware of that, we then served a copy of the order on the person that hadn't been served previously. And so now everybody, I'm confident that everybody who is affected by this order has now been served appropriately with the copy of it. The rest of the objections, objection 4 was slightly different. He objected to the fact that no site visit had been carried out to Area A2 by myself and surveying for the order before making it. And then going on from that to the rest of the objections that he made, it all relates to the use of the area classification for A2. Essentially, the reason for this being that you shouldn't routinely use area classifications on tree preservation orders. The reason being is that sometimes they're often referred to as what people call blanket TPOs. Basically, you put it on an area, it protects everything within that area, but it doesn't actually identify any individual trees. So the issue with that is that over time, they can become quite hard to defend because it becomes unclear as to which tree existed at the time you made the order. So I essentially think that the representation was trying to say that possibly a corner had been cut or something with the making of this, and you know the correct procedure hadn't been followed, and that I just simply used the area classification for expediency. I did use it for expediency, but not for any other reason than the fact that we had a situation with some of the other trees on the order that suddenly required the time frame for the order to be served to be accelerated. And so area classifications are normally used when you wish to serve an emergency or urgent tree preservation order. Now, the urgent requirement to serve this order didn't relate to A2, but it did relate to other trees as part of the order. So there was a sudden expediency to get the order served, and the area classification for A2 can be resurveyed once the order has been confirmed, because it is possible for us to vary the order after the event. And that is essentially what is planned for this TPO. Area A2, along with Area A1, is a couple of areas that we weren't able to get successfully surveyed within the time. But we know, because of the existence of older TPOs that cover this land, that there are trees there worthy of protection, and they will be surveyed when the time allows, once the order's been confirmed, hopefully. And as I say, the order will be then varied to reflect the accurate description of what is on the land. So I take the point that the objection is raising some valid points, but these are all points that we will be addressing once the order's been confirmed, and is perfectly within the scope of the regulations. So that's essentially addressing that particular point. That was all the representations we received for this order. It now goes over to you to determine whether or not you believe that all the representations have been suitably addressed, and if so, then hopefully you'll support confirmation of this order, and we can then make it permanent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gavin, for that comprehensive report. It's actually on my ward, and I've got no observations or comments to make. Councillors, there seem to be quite a few hands going up. Councillor Perry.
Just a couple of things from me, please. How do we stand as members when it comes to declaring interests in, because it's something that we're going to be, it's our own, some of them is in our remit and our ownership. So I just want to know legally where we stand on that point, please.
Chair, there is a general dispensation which has been granted by the monitoring officer in relation to planning applications in respect of the council's land. So there isn't actually an issue so far as interests are concerned.
That's fine. Thank you very much for that. And can I just say I support any TPOs because I'm a tree lover. So thank you for that. I don't want anybody chopping any trees down. So you've got my support on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Hopper-Wallace.
I also share the love of trees with the councillor. Just one question around locations. Can we use more neutral language to describe locations, perhaps GPS coordination, or what 3 words, rather than, I think that might get around the issue of people not having ownership. Is that a possibility to use that kind of language instead?
That's a very good question. It's, to be honest, it's simply the way that TPOs have always been done. Essentially, the idea is to try and keep the language as simple as possible and as obvious as possible, so that anybody who reads a copy of the order can reasonably be expected to understand where that is. That's not just officers, not just members, it's members of the public, and so on and so forth, many of whom possibly won't be up on how to locate something using 3 words or something like that. It's a good idea potentially to look into using those as additional identifiers for locations of trees. I don't know how it would stand with using it as an alternative to it. It's something I'll give consideration to, and potentially on the next one we can possibly look at doing it slightly differently. But yeah.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Gavin, just a quick query. You were saying one part had to be expedited because it came in a bit later or something like that. Have the residents had all the opportunity to make comments and all their, as I say, concerns been addressed in a timely manner?
Yes, the interested parties in the land was the resident of 2 Green Hill Gardens. who actually submitted the representation. So they were served with the order in a timely fashion. They were given their 28 days to submit representations, and we received the representation. And it's actually their concerns that essentially we're discussing this evening. Yes, it was a slightly unusual one, because normally when you talk about expediency with TPOs, it is because there is an urgent situation with the trees in question. And it happened to be that this had nothing to do with A2 and related to trees elsewhere in a situation that was outside of our control as an authority. But yes, they will be fully engaged and fully involved in the surveying of their land and obviously consulted throughout the process.
Members? Councillor Reid? Oh, sorry, you, Councillor Dunn. Do you want to come back on that?
Working on it. Oh, right. The first question, well, the first point I would want to make is I'm also a big favour of TPO, so absolutely we need to preserve them. The first point I would like to make is with regard to the classification A2, you say, yes, it will be done, but how will that be determined when you will do it? Are you programming it into your work schedule? How's that going to work is my first question.
Yeah, there's no set time limit within which it needs to be done. Obviously, the sooner the better with an area classification, because the longer they run, as I said earlier, the more unreliable they become. It is actually my intention to get that surveyed within the month after confirmation, if indeed does happen this evening. So it will be done within the next month.
Right, that sounds good. But what about if there's other more pressing things come in? How will you ensure that it does get done?
If I can just step in, obviously, as sort of Gavin's line managers here. Obviously, Gavin is our single arboricultural officer. We've had an unprecedented number of storms where trees have been, so we will always have to be mindful of that. But that is a daily juggle of managing your workload. But I think what we can say is Gavin sees the priority in doing this, and the longer it takes, the more complex and difficult it may become for others. We want to see this solved swiftly, so that's the best we can say in sort of giving you an actual term. But you're quite right, there may be, let's hope not, some more storms that mean that Gavin has to go elsewhere, but it will stay as a priority and will get dealt with as soon as he possibly can.
Yeah, I knew it would get done. I was just interested how that would sort of program into the schedule. So that's fair enough. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Okay with that, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Reid, was you indicating?
Perhaps Gavin will share the question I asked earlier on about as soon as the notice is given, doesn't give them an opportunity to chop down a tree that's in their way. And apparently, you'd like to endorse what you told me about as the moment the service is notice is served, that's the time that it takes place until it's finalised. Would you like to repeat what you said? Thank you.
Okay, Gavin, you okay to respond to that?
Yes, yeah. It was just we had a brief chat earlier, and I was just clarifying to the councillor that obviously when the tree preservation order becomes legally enforceable and legally binding the minute that it is served. So that as soon as the TPO is made, it comes into effect. So the trees as they currently stand are not unprotected, and the order is in force. It's simply that before a period of 6 months has elapsed, you need to make sure that you then confirm the order, so it then stays in perpetuity, essentially. If it isn't confirmed within that 6 months, the order then lapses and the trees then cease to benefit from the protection that it gave them.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Gavin. Any other members want to make any comments on the recommendations in front of you now? So, sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. Members, the recommendation is to support the confirmation of the tree preservation order. Is everybody in favour of that? Please indicate. Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? Thank you, members. Next item is the monthly update. Is that with you, Helen?
Thank you, Chair. Won't keep you too long this evening, members. Just to rattle through quite a few points, just to say that we had got an update on staffing that I'd like to share with you. Lucy Duffy, who worked with us for quite a long time, lots of you will remember, has moved on to Solihull Council, and we have appointed a replacement for her in an assistant team manager role, who is Tom Nutt, who you may have seen at the table a few times. So he's now in that role. We've also had a reshuffle within strategic planning and some recruitment to strategic planning and development management, and been successful in both posts. So running with a few gaps while we're shuffling people around, but we've got people coming in, which is very positive, I must say, because it books the trend across the country really in terms of recruitment and retention. So that was a positive I wanted to share with you. Upcoming training, I've got down to get Gavin back in a month or two's time to do some general tree training with you all, and then our Conservation and Heritage Officer Ed Higgins will come and do a session as well. So we're hoping to schedule those in for March and May consecutively. Just a heads up on the training that's forthcoming in February with regards to the MPPF changes and the local plan update. They should all be in diaries now, so please encourage you to attend if you can. In terms of central government updates, unfortunately we were not successful with the planning skills and delivery fund that we made a bid for, but we have put a further bid together for digital planning improvements, and we're waiting on the outcome on that. In terms of appeals, I won't go over them individually, but you'll note it was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of dismissed and allowed appeals. Nothing that stands out particularly, unless members have got any ones they would like to raise with me, but just goes to show the balancing exercise, especially with the Greenbelt applications and the one for the local development certificate and the need aspect. So happy to take any queries or questions on that. Other than that, that's it for the update report. Thank you, Chair.
Members heard the monthly update. Any questions for Helen on the monthly update?
Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
It's just on the tree training, just wondering.
Okay, members, so we're wrapping up now. Thank you for Gavin to giving that comprehensive report, and thank you for members the way that you received it. Thank you for this evening. It's been a fantastic meeting, very well conducted by yourselves. Have a safe journey home.